Subscribe and leave a comment saying I subscribed, and I will personally reply to your comment. It was one of those quiet Friday nights when the whole world seemed to be out except me. My parents were celebrating their anniversary downtown, and my little sister was sleeping over at a friend's house. I didn't mind being alone. I had snacks, and it was the 90s, so of course I had a movie that my parents had rented for me in the VHS player, and I had the whole house to myself. Perfect. Around 9:50, just as Jason was about to jump out of the water in Friday the 13th, the doorbell rang. I jumped a little. Nobody was supposed to come by tonight. Peeking through the peephole, I saw a guy standing on the porch, holding a pizza box. He was wearing a black jacket, too big for his skinny frame, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. "Pizza delivery," he said, loud enough to be heard through the door. That was strange. I hadn't ordered anything. I think you have the wrong house," I called out, not opening the door. He didn't budge. "Nah, man, it's for this address. Large pepperoni, extra cheese." He held up the box as if that would convince me. I felt uneasy. "I didn't order anything," I said again, firmer this time. He then said, "Maybe someone ordered it for you? You should at least check, man. It's already paid for." Paid for? That didn't make sense. My parents weren't the type to surprise me with random pizza deliveries, and my mom left my dinner in the refrigerator for me. I thought about opening the door because who doesn't love free pizza? But my dad always told me not to ever open the door if I was home alone, because some kid he knew back when he was a kid got kidnapped because he opened the door to these guys pretending to be plumbers. "I'm good. Thanks," I said, stepping back from the door. And then I heard it. A faint click. The sound of the doorknob being tested. My heart slammed into my ribs. "Hey, don't do that!" I shouted. "Come on, kid. Just open the door. Take your pizza." I backed away slowly, fumbling for the cordless phone on the coffee table. My fingers trembled as I dialed 911. "Get the hell away from my house or I'm calling the cops," I yelled, hoping he'd take the bluff. He didn't. "Don't be like that," he said, his voice colder, more menacing. "It's just pizza, kid." I heard a scraping sound, metal on metal. My stomach sank. He was trying to pick the lock. I sprinted to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife I could find. The phone buzzed with the dispatcher's voice, calm and distant, as I whispered my address and what was happening. "Stay on the line," she said. "Officers are on their way." I crept back toward the front door, clutching the knife so tightly my hand ached. The scraping stopped. Then, I heard heavy footsteps, moving toward the side of the house. The porch light flickered. My stomach twisted. I ran to the living room and killed the lights. My heart pounded in the silence as I crouched behind the couch, watching the window. The backyard floodlight flicked on and I saw him. His silhouette moving toward the back door. There was no sign of the pizza box. He tried the handle. Locked. "Police are coming," I shouted, though my teenage voice cracked. He froze for a moment, then tilted his head toward the window as if he could see me in the dark. He tapped on the glass, that is when I heard him say it.
Little piggy, let me in."
His voice muffled through the glass. I was terrified, and I buried my face in the couch cushion. Moments later, there was loud knocking on the front door, but I was too scared to look. Then a voice said, "Newark Police Department." I felt so relieved. I let the officers in, and they searched out back, but all they found was the empty generic pizza box by the back door. The officers made me call my parents. They had left the numbers of the places they were going to be on the fridge. They headed home right away, and they were relieved to hear I was okay. The cops and my parents both said it was probably just some neighborhood kids playing a prank on me. But I don't think so. To this day, all my friends and anyone I have ever asked from the neighborhood has said it wasn't them. If it wasn't a prank, then I think I am happier to be in the dark about the whole thing. Because if someone was trying to get into the house that night, whatever he wanted doesn't bear thinking about.
I've always thought there was something unsettling about our house at night. The walls creak, the old pipes groan, and the surrounding woods so dark had an eerie feel. But that night was different. That night I realized the unease wasn't just in my head. It was late. Around 1:30, I think. Mom worked at a factory and wouldn't be home till 7 a.m. I was in the living room, slouched on the sagging couch, scrolling mindlessly on my phone. The TV was on mute, flickering silently with that old Woody Harrelson movie on White Men Can't Jump. Outside, the crickets were screaming, their chirping loud enough to cut through the heavy summer air. And then I heard it. A bang. Not the kind you hear when a branch falls or when the neighbor's dog knocks over a trash can. No, this was louder, sharper, like something heavy striking the ground, or maybe being thrown. It came from the backyard. I froze, my phone slipping from my hand and landing face down on the carpet. The crickets had gone silent, as if they were holding their breath along with me. I sat there for what felt like minutes, waiting for the sound to come again. Nothing. Probably just an animal, I whispered to myself. The thing is, our backyard isn't the kind of place where animals usually wander. It's fenced in, and beyond it lies a thick patch of woods that goes on for miles. Not even the neighbor kids dared to venture back there at night. Too many stories about snakes and old wells and ghosts from Civil War times. But I had to know. I got up and went to the kitchen, where the back door has a small window with yellowed curtains. I pulled them aside just enough to peek out. The yard was bathed in moonlight, pale and cold. Everything looked still. The swing set that I hadn't used since I was a kid sat crooked, one of its chains broken and hanging limp like a severed arm. The clothesline swayed gently, though there was no wind. And then I saw it. Near the edge of the yard, right where the grass gave way to the woods, something was lying on the ground. It was too far away to make out clearly, but it was dark and oddly shaped, like a crumpled heap. Maybe a small deer or a fox, I muttered, though my gut told me otherwise. I grabbed the flashlight from under the sink and slid open the back door as quietly as I could. The night air was thick and damp, clinging to my skin like a second layer. "Hello," I called out, immediately regretting it. I descended the creaky steps and walked toward the shape, my bare feet brushing against the cool, damp grass. The flashlight wavered in my trembling hand. As I got closer, the shape began to resolve. It wasn't a deer or a fox. It wasn't an animal at all. It was of all things a doll. A very large old porcelain doll, its face cracked and dirtied, wearing a faded blue dress with lace trim. One of its glass eyes was missing, and its blonde hair was matted and tangled. It was lying on its back, its arms bent at unnatural angles, as though it had been thrown there with force. I couldn't figure it out. Where had the doll come from? Then, all of a sudden, a voice from the edge of the woods said, "Do you want to play with me?" It sounded like a child's voice, like a little girl. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. My breath came in short, panicked gasps, and I turned on my heel, sprinting back toward the house. When I reached the porch, I risked one last glance over my shoulder. The doll was gone. I slammed the door shut and locked it, flipping off the porch light. My heart was pounding so loudly that I could barely hear anything else. I pressed my back against the door. And then came the footsteps on the deck, and then came the knock. Not at the front door, not at the windows. It came from the back door. 3 slow little knocks. I didn't dare move. My legs felt like lead, my body paralyzed by fear. The knocks came again, louder this time. My breath seemed to completely leave my body. Then, a voice. "Why don't you want to play with me, Johnny?" My eyes widened. Whoever, whatever it was, knew my name. I bolted to my room, locking the door behind me and grabbing the baseball bat I kept under the bed. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there on the floor in my room, clutching the bat, waiting for something, anything to happen. By 7 a.m., the sun was fully up and Mom came home. I finally worked up the nerve to leave my bedroom to check the backyard. The doll was gone, but there was something glistening in the grass when I investigated it. It was the doll's glass eye. I packed my things and left that day. Mom still doesn't know why, and I don't think I'll ever tell her. I always thought I was a rational person. Married to an engineer, you learn to appreciate logic and reason. My husband, Caleb, was meticulous in explaining how things worked, grounding me in facts when my imagination occasionally took flight. But nothing Caleb taught me could explain what was happening in our home. He was on another business trip, a week-long one to California, leaving me alone in our 2-story house tucked at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. I didn't mind being alone, not at first. The house, with its creaking wood floors and old pipes, had a way of sounding alive, but I'd grown used to it. That was until those sounds began. The first night after Caleb left, I was sitting in the living room, flipping through a book. It was nearly 10 p.m., the house silent except for the occasional hum of the refrigerator. Then, faintly, I heard it. A muffled thump from downstairs, in the basement. I froze. My first thought was a box must have fallen over. Caleb's workshop down there was cluttered with tools and equipment, but when I went down to check, the basement was as neat as Caleb had left it. The noises continued, growing more insistent as the nights passed. Sometimes it was footsteps. It sounded as if someone was pacing. Other times, it was the sound of something scraping against the wall. Each time I investigated, I found nothing. On the third night, I saw it, or thought I did. I was in the kitchen, putting away the dishes, when a flicker of movement caught my eye. In the corner of the room, just past the doorway, there was something. A figure, pale and blurry, like a smudge on a fogged-up window. I whipped my head around, but the space was empty. I told myself I was tired. Lack of sleep could do strange things to your perception, right? But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Things started moving after that. I'd wake up to find chairs pulled out from the dining table, their legs scraping grooves into the hardwood floor. All the cabinets in the kitchen would be open and picture frames tilted askew, though Caleb had hung them with precision. Once, I found my slippers placed neatly in the middle of the hallway, even though I always left them at the side of the bed. The nights stretched longer. I tried leaving every light on, hoping to drown out whatever was stalking me, but it didn't help. The noises grew louder, closer. The figure, whatever it was, lingered at the edge of my vision, always slipping away before I could fully see it. The worst moment came 2 nights before Caleb returned. I was in the bedroom trying to distract myself with a movie. The TV screen went black for a moment, flickering, and in its brief reflection, I saw a face behind me. Gaunt, pale, eyes sunken deep into sockets that seemed endless. I jumped, adrenaline pumping. I spun around, but the room was empty. I backed into the corner. I could hardly breathe. I didn't sleep that night. When Caleb came home, everything stopped. The noises, the shadows, the moving objects, all gone. It was as if the house was mocking me, gaslighting me. Caleb was sympathetic but skeptical. "Stress, maybe," he said, wrapping an arm around me. "You've been working a lot lately. You just need rest." I wanted to believe him, but I knew it wasn't stress. The house was different when he was here. Calm, almost dormant. But the moment he left for his next trip, the torment resumed. The last straw came 3 weeks later. I was about to climb into bed when something yanked me backward. My scalp burned as I was dragged to the floor by my hair. The force was incredibly violent. I scrambled, clawing at the air, but the room was empty. Utterly and impossibly empty. By the time Caleb returned, I was gone, staying with my sister miles away. I told him I couldn't live in that house anymore. He didn't understand, but he didn't argue. We sold it 5 months later and have never looked back.
Subscribe and leave a comment saying I subscribed, and I will personally reply to your comment.
If you would like to hear more stories and support this channel, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.